All right, here we are to talk about the Smoky Mountains, East Tennessee, which again, I must say how much I love it there. Used to live a lot closer to it than we do now, and it's something I think about all the time. I love Tennessee in general, to be honest. It's such a wonderful place. It's a lot of freedom,
Yes.
and the weather's great. And most cases you got some highs and some lows, but no major extremes. And anyway, I got Reagan here from the East Tennessee Smoky Mountains. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm one of the agents out here in the Smokies, and I actually live in Townsend, Tennessee, which is honestly the best place in the world. So we love living out here. We live in the river. There's this river called the Little River that comes right out from the national park down straight through Townsend. And if we're not at home, the kids are usually swimming in the river. So we love it here too.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you've owned and operated overnight rentals for a decent
Yeah.
amount of time.
2019 was when I bought the first one, and then I've been an agent here for almost 4 years.
Okay, wonderful.
So I've been
Well, we just
around.
want to, get a little update on what you're seeing in the market. We are in the fall of 25. Interest rates are obviously the big ticket item right now. They're starting to go down a little bit. They've been very, higher than they were for quite some time. They've been a little higher. And just the market in general. What are we seeing as far as buyers and sellers and such?
Yeah, so in 2025, as interest rates kind of held around that 7% mark, inventory just kept kind of climbing here in the market. So we just didn't have enough buyers to eat up all of the houses that were coming onto the market. So we could see a steady stream of inventory building in the market. So kind of topped out right around 2,200 listings mid-August, and which is just last month. But we are seeing a little bit of an improvement in the market. We are a little bit more favorable interest rates started about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. We started to see a little bit of a blip down. Today, we just found out we had a 25 point basis cut from the Fed. So hopefully that will even help improve these interest rates further. But we can already see the inventory kind of coming down a little bit and under contracts going up a little bit. But we are still a bit in a sweet spot in the market where this inventory all still exists. So all of these listings have a ton of competition. So one seller may not be able, but not may not be willing to work with you to get to the number that you want to be for purchase price, but you might have five others just up the road with a very similar property that may. So we're kind of in a cool situation in the market that you might have to make multiple offers to try to get to the property that you want at the price point that you want, but sellers are coming down on price and also contributing to closing costs, which can just make the deal even sweeter for a buyer. Okay.
So I just realized I'm wearing a beach hat, so I'm going to switch to something a little bit more Tennessee. There we go.
We need to get you like the Smokey the Bear, like I don't know, like something, I don't know.
Yeah,
Or just
I'm pretty
Smokey.
sure I have like a national park hat somewhere, but
Yeah, like a ranger hat, like a
yeah,
ranger hat. My son has a ranger hat, so
that's cool.
we'll
My
have to find
brother's
you.
actually a national park ranger,
Oh, fun.
but I didn't have time to go digging, so this was readily available. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of folks out there I think that are still living in the past, and 21, 22 was an absolute, it was nuts, especially in your market. I mean, it
Yeah.
was insane with the amount of buyers that were just coming out of the woodwork. And I think that maybe today, and we're sliding into 26 here. I think a lot of people don't realize that that's gone, and I don't think it's even your markets. I think it's nationwide. This is going on where people don't realize that there's been a big shift from the way up here insanity down to for the past year or two, things have been very slow in real estate sales. And now we may be starting to see a little bit of action going on. But are you seeing that? Are you seeing buyers that are kind of still like, hesitant because they're living in the past?
Not necessarily hesitant, but I think that they are definitely concentrating on running the numbers more. Cash flow is definitely maybe a little bit slimmer than it was in the past. Well, maybe not even in the hot time whenever things were selling for over ask and things like that. The real driving factor was that low interest rate, but then you still have to operate it and make it cash flow at that point. So today, to me, it's no harder to cash flow, to be honest, because you're just needing to run your numbers and offer at the price that makes sense with the current interest rates. And if interest rates improve in the future and you're able to refinance in the future, then you're just going to be even in a better position. But I have to come back. So come back to me about like in the beginning with whenever everything was selling for over ask.
Oh, me, you mean?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can't remember the exact
Do you
beginning.
think people are still in that same mindset where, why should I bother because there's so many buyers out there?
I don't think so, but I do think I'm experiencing buyers that are more willing to put the work in though. So to
Mm,
run the numbers and to vet the properties and at least now they have options. So back whenever everything was flying off the shelf in a week, you kind of had to, if you wanted to buy something, you had to, go after the one that kind of fit what you wanted and that was what you got because there was really no other options. But
mm.
now you're able to be a little bit more selective in it since there is so much inventory and so which I think is definitely a benefit to the buyer.
Is it a numbers game? In other words, what I've been doing, I haven't bought in the Smokies in a while. I do look though. I have bought two beach houses this year, in on 30A, the hat I was wearing. But I just made a ton of offers. That's how I found deals.
Yes.
And so, in other words, we narrowed it down to like 5 or 6 houses we were interested in. We also did the same thing on a personal residence as well, a primary situation where, there was so much available for sale. It was almost, it was hard to decide there was so much for sale. So I have two parts to that question. Number one, are you seeing it as a numbers game? Is like find multiple properties and offer on a lot of them until you find the deal? But is that in turn maybe making the choice a little more difficult because there's options?
Yes, I think it depends on the buyer and what their motivation is. So if I had a buyer that came to me that had $1 million budget. She had $1 million budget. She wanted to buy the most property she could buy for $1 million. And we literally we
Wait.
made
Which is how many?
one. She wanted one property.
Oh, most like the biggest.
Most property,
I
yes,
got you.
itself, yes, that she could get for $1 million. So, we combed through the MLS and we made ourselves a list of what we liked best to worst and just kind of started at the top. And several of them were listed for more than $1 million. And we just wanted to see how, possibly motivated the seller may be. And I think it was the fourth offer that we ended up all the other ones got rejected or we countered back and forth and just couldn't come to terms. But the fourth offer, she was able to pick up a 6 bedroom, brand new construction for under $1 million. So, which very nice property, 3,000 square feet, wonderful. So it was a work, getting into this thing, but with all the offers and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way either. But you have to also know kind of what you want to go after. So if you want a 2 bedroom that is in a particular, budget range, then kind of the same thing, kind of find the best fit for the money in that budget range.
So, in other words, find 4 or 5 that you're slightly interested in, but don't let yourself fall in love.
Yes.
Go out there and make a bunch of offers, whack up the sellers, do the best you can to get the best deal you can, and then fall in love.
Yes.
Okay.
After inspection.
Yes, after inspection.
So, no, don't follow it before inspection.
Hey, you
Yes.
mentioned new construction, and again, this is a relatively new thing. We didn't really see new construction in the Smokies from about 2006, 7, right right around '08 until COVID, really. So, where are we at with new construction right now? Because there was a few years there where it was like all over the place, like, whoa, what is going on? And it was very common to have these new listings for sale. Where do we stand in the new construction market? Like, is there still a lot of it, and is it attractive?
So I don't think there's as much as there was kind of during the COVID time, just because there were two wildfires, the 2016 Gatlinburg fires, and then there was one, I can't remember, in the 2020s on the Hatcher Mountain that burned several properties. So for a while there, we were kind of just rebuilding on, properties or on foundations that were burned. But there have been new developments started in the Smokies with new constructions. I I don't know exactly how many. They are still building a few, but I don't see as many. Used to, you could find like a property that was under construction. You could go under contract on very easily on the MLS, but there's not as many these days.
Are they attractive? I mean, a general rule of thumb, at least that I've always followed, is you can have cash flow or you can have turnkey. That being said, I have bought new construction
It
before, and
just
it,
depends. Yeah. It is also builder quality and things like that too. So I think that is also the advantage of being like hooked in with the realtor here in the Smokies is like if it's just some Joe Blow that we don't know, he's coming from Minnesota or something and buying a lot and he's going to develop it himself and bring in his own builders. We've seen some people get into a bit of a situation being under contract on some of these new constructions and then they not quite, they're not built to the quality that they should be and things like that. And there's delays and things like that. But so builder quality can definitely be a big piece in that new construction thing. But typically if it's one that's still building and you're going to go under contract on it, you're going to have to wait obviously a little bit of time for it to be completed. So those are usually priced a little bit more favorably just to kind of, I guess, incentivize buyers to go under contract before they're built to kind of, help position them better, I guess, like the developers that they already have a buyer for the property before it's even completed. But then now we've got some that a bunch. So since we have so much inventory in Sevier County, people that have built new constructions that are just getting thrown in with the rest of the inventory. And some of those people, the builders need to move them. They're just sitting on money tied up into these buildings that they're not renting or are not renting well, probably, to be making revenue for the short-term rental perspective. So they can be ones that you can also get a deal on, just because they're not as emotionally involved in the property. They're not managing the property. They just built it. They want to sell it and get their cash out of it. And so we've seen a little bit of that too.
everything you're saying it gets me excited as a buyer. I'm like, man, I need to go shopping.
Come on.
What is living there? Tell me about living there. Are you seeing changes there at all? Have you seen more people moving there to be vendors? Is that changed in the past post-COVID years or not really?
So I live on the Townsend side, which is the far west side of the market. So we're kind of like a little blip off to the side. So I don't. So Maryville is the big town that's kind of right next to Townsend.
Hmm.
So I do see we've got a lot of growth just in the economy of the city in general, but they complain everybody moving here from California.
Mm.
But so which my neighbors are from California. So like that is true, but in Chicago. But um I I don't think it's a ton of people moving here, to be honest, to work here. I don't know. I don't think.
Because there are an abundance of jobs, right? If you
Well,
move to your town to the East Tennessee Smoky Mountains and you are willing to work, you can get work, right? It's pretty easy.
trades crafts like electricians, plumbers, anybody that wants to learn a blue collar trade and be a very good professional in their job could do very well here.
Hmm.
Builders can do the build quality that could do well here. I joke that I think that there's like one group of like flooring guys and one group of sheetrock guys because I think that all of the builders like they have to wait their turn to use like the good
Mm.
sheetrock guys. But yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, definitely could
Major
do that.
shortage of sheetrock in general. Uh,
We have so much tongue and groove. So I think sheetrock is definitely a
that's true. I
like
didn't think about that.
yeah, so we have so much tongue and groove that so if I see a sheetrock house, like I'm expecting the sheetrock job to be awful because there's just not that many people that do
Mm.
good sheetrock here. But I mean, obviously they do have some better
I
people
actually
too.
read
But
somewhere recently about a major sheetrock shortage, like per
yeah,
people to do not shortage of sheetrock, but people to do the job.
AI is not going to put up sheetrock. So
100%.
that might be a where we need to
It's
go.
an opening. And I will, but I will say, of all this, I find myself pretty good around a house. Sheetrock is hard. It is so hard to line
I've
up.
puttied many a hole, and I don't
Yeah,
ever want to putty holes again.
man, the tape and the getting the lines perfect. It's I was looking at a house earlier that had rounded sheetrock on the corner of it was really large rounding though, and I was like, man, I don't want to be that guy. That
It's an
looks very
art.
so
Yeah,
hard.
it
Yeah.
is an art.
Anyway, you have an interesting perspective on analyzing deals. I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah.
And like, what am I doing to look for a deal in the Smokies today?
So obviously running your numbers is key. So the when you run your numbers, I like to think in terms of things that are absolutes that you can know first. So when I run in my numbers, I start with all of the information I can put a number to and be fairly confident about. So obviously the purchase price, how much taxes am I going to pay on it? What I think, use some good generalizations for utilities and expenses and things like that. And I come up with a number that it's kind of like my break even number. So all of these things all my knowns, I come into my knowns and I come up with my break even number. And then the one piece that is your unknown is how much money is this property going to make? So revenue in short-term rentals is so dependent on the management of these properties. So it's a range of what we think a property can produce. There's lots of different ways to estimate revenue. The enemy method. We've got platforms that data scrape. So Price Labs, AirDNA. I think what was the Air Divots or whatever,
Everdex.
Airvidix or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ones that you can kind of use to kind of, I don't know, come up with it because you have to come up with some sort of idea. Obviously, you might be given rental history from a property, but really that's just giving you an indicator of how well it was managed in the past, like how good of a manager it was. So I like to just look at the market from a high level. And this is kind of Smokies specific because I get like in some markets, you have to be like across a certain road or in this certain neighborhood. So Smokies is Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg. It's a pretty wide area, and a majority of the area is short-term rental friendly. So as long as we're kind of staying within that 20-minute driving distance to one of the major attractions, destinations, we're usually pretty good here in the market as far as positioning the property. I'm gonna can I share my screen really
Absolutely.
quickly? Okay.
Oh,
So
hold on. Let me change it. You should be good now.
let's see. Oh. All right, so this is just kind of how I like to use AirDNA to give me some high level kind of ranges of what I can expect a property to produce. So in AirDNA, I'm looking at just like the market in general. So the whole Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge market. You can drill down into these submarkets if you like, but it really doesn't make much of a difference in the numbers. So I'm just looking at the market as a whole. So I want to go ahead from the get-go and just kind of schlep off all of the kind of bad comps, bad data that I don't want to bring in. So that's properties that haven't been listed very long, properties with really bad reviews, properties that have available days to rent are very low. Like those are just not going to pull in good data for me. I want properties that have been listed for a whole year, preferably things that have higher than 4.7 star ratings to make sure that they're at least decent performers. I'm going to go ahead from the get-go and filter that on here. So up here in listings, so I'm going to leave this here. So let's say we're going to analyze a 2-bedroom in the Smokies. So we're going to change the bedroom count to 2 bedrooms. And then I don't care about the bathrooms. I want the entire place. And then I just leave the real estate type to whatever.
And
And
why do
that's
you do
going to
that? Because there's only one real estate type in the Smokies? Is that
pretty
like,
much.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean like apartments. If I'm doing the entire place, then I mean I don't really know how they actually bucket this stuff anyway.
yeah. Seems a
But
little redundant.
yes. So then I'm going to come over here to performance. So I'm bringing in all of the performance price tiers that they have here. I am going to bring in both professionally managed and self managers. And this right here is host count. That's just how many properties the host has. I just leave that all. So this is where I start drilling down into the good data. So days available. I want to look at properties that have been available for most of the year. So I'm checking 181 to 270 and then 271 to 365. Really, probably the 271 to 365 is really what you should be looking at, but just to kind of give you, make sure you're bringing in, I guess, a good comp set. I'm
Yeah,
going to leave it
but just
right
to get
there.
enough houses, basically.
Yes. And then here's where I'm going to toggle on that star rating. So I'm going to set it at a 4.7. Anything that's below 4.7 on Airbnb is not showing up in the algorithm and is not going to be booking well anyway. So that's where I leave my review star rating. And then for my review count, I'm going to just set it here to over 10. So I leave it a little bit lower here because sometimes on AirDNA, I've noticed, so you can obviously you get reviews from Verbo and Airbnb, and sometimes those numbers can kind of, I don't know, they don't mesh well together, like they don't add them up for some reason. So I leave the review count a little bit lower there, and then I hit apply. So right now, this is telling me that a average two-bedroom cabin in the Smokies using those parameters is going to do 54,000 K per year.
Hmm.
But what I really like to do is I'll come down here into revenue, the revenue section. And it gives you a bunch of graphs and other things here. But the very bottom, it's going to tell you here what a property is going to be producing at a percentile wise. So the properties performing in like the 50th percentile are exactly average. So out of 100, if I have a 100 property comp set, the property at number 50, this is what it would be performing at. So exactly average. So I take this graph because they give you it by monthly, and it would be nice if they would total it up for you, but they don't. But this is trailing 12 months. So that's really nice because it can kind of give you a real time, like people will say, like, what did something do in 2024? Or what did something do in 2023? But maybe I want to know exactly what it did over the past 12 months that are, the most recent to me. So this is, to me, better data if you're trying to find out real time what a property could possibly produce. But then I'll export this. Let me know if this comes up in the screen share. Oh, there we go. So this exported, can you see this, Luke?
No. Hold on a
Okay,
second.
hold on just a second. So this is what it spit out for me. So this is telling me by month over the past 12 months what these properties produced in revenue. So then I can see a 50th percentile property is going to do it's around 51,000. But say a 75th percentile property, it did about 69,000. So if I'm looking at properties, I can fairly confidently, assess that a two bedroom should probably, an average two bedroom can probably produce between 50 and $70,000. So somewhere in there. So obviously something that's performing on like the 75th percentile range is going to be a little bit nicer. Maybe something that has granite countertops, updated bathrooms, things like that. So you can kind of gauge by your subject property what you're looking at, kind of where it will fit into these percentiles. So if it's, needs a full-on rehab, it might be over here at the 25th percentile. So maybe only making $35,000 per year. But, with some certain upgrades or things like that, like it can maybe give you an idea of what a property's potential could possibly be. So that's kind of how I like to like look at ranges and estimate revenue from a high level.
Interesting.
Stop share.
And I like the now hold on, can you go back to that? As you still have
Oh
it?
gosh. Yes.
You
Sorry.
basically got four fives and sixes. I like that. That's a nice little rule of thumb there. Go back to the
This,
spreadsheet. So
yeah.
you got four fives and sixes and a couple of threes, right? Well, mostly five, six, sevens actually. I'm looking at 75th because I figure that
Oh,
a decent owner operator that's been through the
yeah.
short term shop, maybe had some coaching, should probably be in that range right there in the green box. And I like that
Yeah.
we got five, sixes, and sevens is really what we're looking at here. Now these are not in order, right? They're the months are out of order for some reason.
Oh, it did. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did them by it did them um I don't know what it did. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah.
it
So,
didn't.
in other words, maybe a March and April or a 6, and a June and July or a 7, and an August is a 5 or something. That's an
Yeah.
interesting concept there. You could really drive yourself nuts looking at these numbers all day.
But then you kind of have, so like this is market as a whole. So like if we're thinking from the two-bedroom range, then I like to use it as kind of like a baseline. So kind of, when I'm looking at purchase price numbers and then I'm knowing that an average two-bedroom is going to do this amount of money per, per year in revenue, it helps me kind of automatically rule out ones that I think are way too overpriced that will never, their purchase price will never cash flow with what I think the revenue will be. Will also help me, quickly gauge what I think would be a good cash flow, or if it's, priced right, and then I think it can do that revenue.
Mm.
Helps you kind of make quick decisions there, and then you can get, drill down using the enemy method or things like that to kind of get. If you want to get, really into like the numbers of the surrounding properties.
Yeah. And so basically, I mean, I've always felt like this. A two-bedroom, here's your number. And I think these numbers are pretty close. Like 60,
Yeah.
70 grand on a pretty good two-bedroom
Yeah.
is, for somebody that's working hard,
Is achievable.
it's a
Yeah.
realistic number. Uh,
Well, we kept like, I would hear people say all the time, they would shoot out these ranges, like a property should do between X and X. And I'm a numbers person, I'm a data person. So I was like, I want something to prove that to me, that I can prove that easily and repeatable. And this is kind of where I came for that.
what's the 90%? What's that total, the sum?
So 88,000.
See, that's a little steep if you ask me. I mean, it can be
So,
done.
but yeah, but I mean, think about it. If we're talking about a two-bedroom in Chalet Village with a view of Mount LeConte, like I have a three-bedroom that does, $120,000 a year in there. So like,
Yeah, but you're not
yeah,
everybody.
I get that, but I also have a fantastic view and a nice house. So like so you have to look, if you're looking at a property that you're assessing that's got a pool and a view and it's got all the bells and whistles, pickleball court, whatever. Then that 88,000 is probably a more, you don't want to run your numbers thinking that property is only going to do $50,000 a year,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's kind of what we're saying. I think what you're saying is it's equal parts like what does the data tell me versus how nice is this house versus purchase price.
Yep.
Simple as that, sort of. Okay, cool. And then of course going to the enemy method is more difficult, but it's also great peace of mind is what that is.
Yes.
It's time consuming. It's a pain in the ass. Most people want the easy button, and the enemy method is not that, especially now that cleaning fees are hidden and things like that. So you do need to spend some time on it. But again, for me, that's part of the fun. That's a lot. It's fun. So have fun with it. Shop for a property. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the obsession. But there's a fine line between that and analysis paralysis,
Yeah,
that kind of a
analysis
thing.
paralysis. I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, and like looking at things a little high level for those folks that get stuck in analysis paralysis, I think can be helpful because at some point nothing works. And I think if you get too granular and you get too like in the weeds with it, and then or everything works, I don't know. So at some point you kind of get, I don't know, where you lose focus of what exactly you're looking for. And the revenue piece is nothing is guaranteed. So, you have to make the best do the best job at gauging what you think it can produce and how you can manage it, and commit to making it a performer. So that's such a big
Yes.
piece of it.
Love it. I do want to mention it's all about the guests. Guests are number one all the time. We talk about all these numbers and spreadsheets and money, 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 money. But the whole point of the whole thing is vacations, happy vacations for hardworking folks. And honestly, in my experience, if that's important to you, you will do well. These folks have to be happy and good vibes in the universe. I'm not trying to be all granola bar here or anything, but to me, that's a big part of it. They need to be shown a good time for their families, and that vibe will stay in that house. That vibe is there from those families, and it'll pass on to the next family, and then eventually your reviews build to the point where you're peak price per night.
Yep.
Well, Reagan, you're wonderful. How do we find you?
So you can find me at Reagan at theshorttermshop.com. That's my email. I'm one of the agents here in the Smoky Mountains. So find me there on the website.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. The shorttermshop.com and the Smoky Mountain podcast. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye now.